friends, so trauma comes in many, many forms and in many different sizes and shapes, etc. It would be impossible to even list them all, never mind cramming them into one video. It's always an unwelcome guest, too, often happening when you were not expecting it and definitely staying way too long. There are a lot of uncertain things about it, too, but one thing that is certain is that it's something that just about everyone experiences in their lifetime. I want to talk about one particular type of trauma today that I feel doesn't always get tons of attention. Maybe it's because it's not something that happens suddenly, like a natural disaster or a death in the family, etc. It's one of those traumas that builds slowly over time. It's kind of like the lighting of a room, I think. You don't exactly know when it started getting brighter, but it does, and then just next thing you know, the room is lit. Unfortunately, what we are going to talk about is definitely not lit, as in bright or exciting. It's actually quite the opposite. The trauma I am referring to is feeling emotionally invisible. Having known many people who have suffered from this, even if they don't have that specific name for it, and full disclosure, having suffered through it myself, it really damages your self-esteem and your sense of self-worth, which in turn can lead you to making some poor life choices. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We'll start at the beginning. What does feeling emotionally invisible mean exactly? The basic answer is, it's a constant feeling that nobody truly sees, hears, or understands you. Feeling like you cannot be yourself in a completely authentic manner. Having to keep who you are and or how you feel to yourself because you are always in an environment where you either don't feel safe talking about it or you feel nobody will understand you anyway. This may sound like it's something that only affects younger people or children, but I assure you it is most definitely not. There are plenty of adults who have feelings like this. I would venture to say probably more than there are children, simply because of awareness. Children are, children. They are generally not aware of what trauma is yet. When you are an adult, things are different. Most adults can point to an event or perhaps a series of them where things took a turn and understand that, yeah, all those things I thought were the end of the world when I was a kid were actually a big nothing burger, especially compared to what I'm maybe going through right now. So, yeah, feeling emotionally invisible can affect anyone, and it does not discriminate by age or gender or anything else. When it begins in childhood, it can be something like parents who force you to do things that you really, really don't want to do to the point where you start to feel shame about it. Or being the weird kid at school who has very different interests than most of the others, causing you to feel like you don't belong or that the other kids don't like you. And then you move into adulthood and you find out a truth that should really be in the Becoming an Adult starter kit, that the thing your favorite auntie or teacher used to tell you about how they're only making fun of you because they are jealous of you is actually only true about half of the time. Sometimes they are making fun of you because you are different and they do not know what to do with that. Then, as if on cue, it feels like those things that make you special or different than others isn't a sore spot, it's more like a gaping wound. That can lead you to be isolated and a bunch of other things that are not really good for your mental health, to say the least. To cope when you're a younger person, you might try to talk to your parents or other adults in your life about how you feel. If you're older, you might try to do this with friends or coworkers or, hell, the guy at the Wendy's drive-thru. But you feel as though you can't without getting mocked for it or having those feelings be dismissed. All of this and much more than we could ever possibly cover in one video adds up. It festers over time. It gets fed additional fuel, like disappointments and betrayals, people constantly telling you you're too sensitive, etc., and it just keeps growing. And next thing you know, you find yourself with a healthy amount of resentment and feelings of not being good enough to be listened to. Sometimes even trust issues, because you can begin to feel like you can't trust people with your real self or your real feelings. In other words, you feel what is really a kind of neglect. And neglect is a strong emotion that can sort of force you inward, like a turtle who just found himself in danger. You don't want to come out of your shell, so to speak, because you feel like nobody cares if you do anyway. Nobody is paying attention to you. Feelings of neglect and invisibility and not being good enough, etc., when you keep feeling them over time, it makes you a prime candidate for being manipulated. Because you feel you're not getting the attention that you need. So when someone comes along and gives you even a tiny sliver of it, you feel like you have won the jackpot. Finally, right? Somebody cares about me and what I have to say. Somebody is listening. Or at least it seems that way. Sometimes people who are master manipulators see that in others and they latch onto them like a tick on a dog. Why? To put it crudely, because they see that as an easy mark. They know they can simply make the smallest of effort in any kind of relationship with you, and you will eat it up and do whatever the manipulator wants, because you want to keep feeling that rush of dopamine, that temporary happiness that you get from being acknowledged. So you don't want to stop feeling it. You continue chasing it, even if that chase is going to lead you right into danger. This is how bullies at school find kids who might be lonely and don't have a lot of friends and manipulate them into doing things that they would have never even dreamed of doing on their own. It's how young adults get pulled into relationships when they're being taken advantage of grossly, but they still associate themselves with that taker because they so desperately want that sense of belonging and to be seen. And it's how people of young and old adult ages end up in abusive, toxic relationships because they're afraid of being alone and not getting validation. Someone will give that to them, and they will be living for that. So they put up with infinite amounts of that person's BS so they can be thrown an occasional dog bone of it. And again, don't think this is a young person problem. It happens to grown-ass adults all the time. I've seen it in the lives of friends or family members. Hell, I have had this problem myself at many different times throughout my life, and I have made some poor choices and mistakes as a result. To be honest, the deepest and most significant times I have felt emotionally invisible were, in fact, as an adult. It never occurred to me that I was feeling that way because of the people and things I was surrounding myself with, though. I thought it was 100% a me problem, that I needed to change and be different and less of who I authentically am. That was wrong-headed, but I certainly didn't see that at the time because I kept knocking and tugging and trying to force open doors that in the end had nothing behind them anyway. Your ego is funny like that sometimes. It goes into a tizzy over losing something that feels like it's of great value, but it turns out it was fool's gold, a worthless tchotchke the whole time. And when you make that realization, you might be a little bit mad at yourself, but once you get over that, it is really such an empowering moment. Nothing quite solidifies your sense of self-worth like walking right past the very things that you used to trip over. Anyway, getting back to the point here, people who feel emotionally invisible often exhibit these other signs too. Overthanking people for listening. Speaking too quickly because they don't want to bother people with what they have to say. Trying to make themselves as small as possible so they aren't in the way. Dimming their opinions and even their words because they feel that, well, they're not that important anyway. Not wanting to talk about the things that eat away at you because you don't want to burden people with those feelings. All of these things are all forms of an apology for simply taking up space. But The thing is that none of these things are things you should be sorry about at all. There is nothing wrong with taking up space. There is nothing wrong with expressing your feelings. There's nothing wrong with saying what you have to say. Expecting people to listen to you is a very, very reasonable expectation. And you know what else is a very reasonable expectation? Being treated well, being respected, not being taken advantage of or played for a fool or manipulated just because someone feels that they have that power over you. Not being overlooked by the people who are supposed to love you. Being made to feel like you are worth only what you can do for someone else versus what you actually are worth and you know on the inside. Yet, people who feel emotionally invisible often get stuck in those kinds of traps where they accept scraps they're given versus the full course meal that they actually deserve. In their mind's eye, they often justify that by thinking those things are better than nothing, or that, well, maybe I just don't deserve better anyway. And they feel shame, too, for being too much, or not enough, or different, or whatever. And listen, let me give it to you straight here. This is a lie. You deserve to be respected, and heard, and treated well, and have your needs met. And it is so important for you to confront the shame that keeps telling you different. The shame that you never deserved in the first place. You are not your mistakes. You are not broken or useless or unable to be something worthy. You're already worthy. You're already valid. How you feel is important and it matters. And what you have to say is too. Everyone deserves to feel seen and heard and understood. You should never feel ashamed for wanting or needing that. It is a very basic part of being human. Stop letting other people make you feel like it isn't. If you are in an environment where you feel like your feelings don't matter, you're not being listened to, you're not being respected, and you're not being valued, you're probably in the wrong environment. Stop listening to the voice of shame that keeps telling you that you need to stay there. You don't. Find your voice, even if all you can say right now is, it's time. And then take a step forward, however small it may be, that will lead you to the place where you are listened to, where you are respected, and where you are valued. Your future self will thank you immensely. That's all I've got for you this week. I'll be back next week with another priority message. Until then, take good care of yourselves. Bye.